Hello YouTube, how's it going? This is the crossover and I'm back with another video. Today is going to be another one of my individual scouting reports, and in today's video we are going to be taking a look at Ohio State's guard Malaki Branham. So without any further delay, let's get straight into the video. Moving on to some stats regarding Malaki Branham. He is 18 years old, stands at about 6 foot 5 inches, weighs about 180 pounds, and has a 6 foot 10 inch wingspan. Very impressive physical profile for the guard. We'll talk about the weight later, even though it might seem a bit alarming. You might think that he has a bit of a thin frame, but that couldn't be farther from the case. Malaki Branham actually carries that weight really well. It's actually about 180 pounds of just muscle, but we'll talk more about that later. Very impressive physical profile. And moving on to his on-court stats, this is his freshman year at Ohio State, where he is averaging a very impressive 13.3 points, 3.6 rebounds, and 1.9 assists per game. It doesn't really fill out the stat sheets outside of scoring, and he occasionally has some really good rebounding games, but he is the second option on this team behind forward E.J. Liddell. In terms of his efficiency, he does have a very good effective field goal percentage of 54.7%. He's also shooting very well from the free throw line at 82.6% from the charity line. And as usual, I always include my three-point attempt rates for my prospects. And does have a three-point attempt rate of 27.1, which is very solid. We'll talk more about his overall scoring game later on in the video. He's a much better, I usually like to include these for those of you that don't know, just to give us a glimpse into a player's shot profile. However, Malaki Branham is one of the best shooters in this class. I'll just come out and say that right now. We'll talk more about that in just a second. However, he also does have a 23.7% usage rate, which is second on this Ohio State team, behind obviously their first option, E.J. Liddell. Moving on to the strengths of Malaki Branham as a prospect. First up, as I just mentioned briefly, I want to talk about his shooting, specifically his spot-up shooting, where he is one of the best spot-up shooters in this class, in my opinion. We'll start off with his mechanics. First off, they're just beautiful. His release is great. His guide hand is nice and straight up in the air. And the same thing with the shooting hand. It's up. It's straight. You don't have to really worry about his release or anything like that. Everything with the shooting motion is nice and smooth and crisp. I do have a slight problem, even though it doesn't necessarily seem to bother him too much. He does kind of buckle his knees a little bit when he catches, and then he kind of has to wind down a little bit. But that doesn't, the winding up part doesn't necessarily happen all the time, which I really like, because a lot of the shooters in this class, a lot of them have to catch and then wind up, as opposed to them just being, ready to shoot and then catch and then just rise up. Malaki Branham does that very well. He doesn't have to necessarily wind up all the time. He's always just ready to shoot, and when you see players who are just ready to catch and shoot, they don't have to necessarily go back down and then wind up again. That's a great sign for a player being a smooth shooter. Right there, you see that their mechanics and their routine is very smooth, and that's what you love to see about Malaki Branham. And more so about his percentages, which back up the eye test. He is shooting about 42% on about 3.6 attempts per game. And the reason why I mentioned his spot-up shooting, even though his on-ball three-point shooting is pretty good, I think he's shown upside there. Almost a little bit over 90% of his three-point shots are assisted on, right? So I have to classify him more as a spot-up shooter right now, as opposed to like a three-point creator. But I do think that the potential is there, given a number of his other strengths, as we will get into right now. One of those being his mid-range game. It's very deadly. He's a very bouncy player. We kind of talked about it before with Kennedy Chandler, where players are kind of just bouncy, right? They're always just bouncing around the court, so that they keep their defender, guessing what their next move is going to be. Malaki Branham does a great job of doing that, and just given how physically big he is, as you guys can see in these highlights right now, he's just big. Even though he has, again, those 180 pounds, he carries that very well. It's about 180 pounds of muscle, and he's able to just use that and maneuver his way around, right around that 3 to 10 foot range on the court, right around the 3 to 10 foot area on the court. He's able to just maneuver his way around with his handle, with his bounciness, with his strength. Really, he loves to use his body, and he's very patient, and you love to see that. and he gets to his spots very well. You know, the form is smooth on most of his mid-range shots. I will talk about that later, just a little bit in my concerns section regarding Malaki Branham. But overall, just a very smooth stroke, and it really carries over to his mid-range shots. And as you guys can see there, he's not a bad spot. He's not a bad pull-up three-point shooter either. It's just a matter of, you know, the attempts. I think there is definitely upside for him to be a three-point shot creator, but you know, you really love his ability to get to his spots at the mid-range, and his release is so high on the lot of these shots, and he's able to just use his body to just create space, and he also gets up the ground. He also gets off the ground very well. You know, you don't really see that from a lot of players. You know, I always think, you know, my last video was on Kennedy Chandler, and he barely gets off the ground on a lot of his jump shots, and especially at the free throw line, that's just not the case with Malaki Branham. The guy gets off the floor, and again, that's just something that you love to see, and just all these strengths are just so translatable to the NBA level, and is another reason why I love Malaki Branham as a prospect so much. And another very underrated part of his game is just his pace. As I mentioned, he's kind of always playing in his own pace, but in part of that is also his burst. You know, he's not the quickest or greatest of athletes. However, that slight burst that he does have is just so noticeable, and he almost kind of lulls defenders to sleep in a sense, and he's able to just blow past them, even though it's not the most glaring burst that you'll come across, right? It's not like a Jaden Ivey or anything like that, but even just that slight change of speed, that little get off that he has, that burst, just makes such a difference in the world, and it just really allows him to get wherever he wants on the court. And moving on to another part of his scoring package, his floater game, specifically with his right hand, is just automatic, and he loves his right-handed floaters, and he gets them off really anywhere on the court. We'll start off with the opposite this time. We'll talk more about his percentages, where he's shooting a very, very impressive 41% from the mid-range / floater area, and he's only being assisted on 70% of those shots, which is also incredible, considering he's an 18-year-old freshman, right? And you know, this team is kind of lacking in you know, real table setters, this Ohio State team. So that's extremely impressive for Malaki, and everything that translates with his mid-range shooting game translates to the floater. But I really love about the floater is that he doesn't need too much space to get it off. He does a great job, as I mentioned before, you know, just utilizing his body and just his strength and his size, and his body control is also great as well. And with all that hopping that he does, he's able to just create space, and he doesn't need a lot of space to get off his floaters, and he has such a quick release with them, and just a soft touch with them. So again, it's just another part of his game that I see translating very well to the next level. Another part of his game that I really love is just his finishing at the rim. He's just an awesome finisher. Absolutely awesome finisher. This time I'll start off with the percentages as well, because I think this is really jaw-dropping. He's shooting 70% at the rim while only being assisted on 20.8% of those shots. That's incredible. That's incredible. Again, as I mentioned, you know, you think about, you know, guys finishing at the rim, you know, you'd imagine that, you know, the percentage of their finishes at the rim would be, that they're being assisted on, would be much higher, right? But with Malaki, that's just incredible that he's able to just get to the rim and finish the way he is, really be able to score at all three levels on offense, and just be able to do it so efficiently and without really much guard play, right? It's really just him and EJ Liddell out there really doing everything for this team, and that's just so impressive. And you know, the eye test backs this up. He's just such an incredible finisher at the rim. His body control is awesome. He's really a right-handed finisher. I think his left-handed finishing is something that he is going to have to develop, but his right-hand finishing is incredible. He's able to shoot little hook, high arcing shots at the rim. He did that against Rutgers over Caleb McConnell's shot that I really liked, that I was out there the game, I took note on. It was a very impressive shot. He's able to do underhanded layups, but he really likes to finish on the right side of the court. And although it isn't necessarily a problem at the college game, just because he's able to get to his spots, he's able to just maneuver himself to get to that right side. He's able to adjust to contact again, just given how strong and big he is. And again, as I stated, he really loves his up and unders. He's going to finish on the right side of the court, however he has to. And you know, just given his, again, how high up the ground he's able to get off, his body control, just his strength, and so on and so forth. The different physical, tangible strengths that we've talked about, he's able to just utilize those to get to his right hand and finish with his right hand, which is very impressive. And just being such an elite, efficient three-level scorer, being 18 years old, is just so impressive to me. And moving on to another part of his offensive game, which is his handle. It's not necessarily anything crazy. He doesn't have, like, you know, a deep bag like a player like Atari Eason, or a player like Kennedy Chandler. but it's a very solid handle. He really likes his crossovers. He doesn't necessarily do anything too crazy. He just really sticks to his crossovers, but again, with just that change of pace and just his body control, he's able to just lull defenders to sleep. I believe against Michigan State the game was. He was coming down the court on the left side, crossed over to his right side, kind of stopped a little bit, and then did the Allen Iverson crossover, and then finished up and under with his right hand. That's just an example of different plays that Malaki Branham displays or showcases that shows you that even though the handle isn't necessarily great so far, it's good enough, and just he doesn't need to have all that great of a handle, just given how big and strong he is, and just his change of pace and whatnot, right? Now don't get me wrong, I think his handle could use some work. I think it's something that could help him take the next step in terms of being a legit star in the NBA, which I do think he has the upside of being. But just getting by from day one, I think his handle and just his IQ and his pace should be enough to get him by. Moving on to the defensive side of the floor, where again he's a very solid prospect. Not going to create a lot of turnovers, but he doesn't have to. Just a very strong, disciplined defender. Very good point of attack defender as well. Very quick laterally. His length causes a lot of problems for ball handlers as well. And he's also a very good post defender as well, just given how strong he is, right? It's just hard for a lot of players to post him up, and he just does such a great job of just staying ground. His lower body strength is very impressive as well. Defenders are not going to be able to just score on Malaki Branham as well. It's going to take a lot of effort to score on him as a point of attack defender, which is again it's so impressive to see such a complete two-way prospect for being an 18-year-old freshman, right? And another great part of his game is also his weak side defense. He's always alert. His head is always on a swivel, and he gets through screens very well. Even if he does get kind of clipped by a screen, he does a great job of adjusting, getting over, and he really kind of take off a little bit and kind of use his length to kind of maneuver and make up for getting caught on the screen and contest the shot, which he does a great job of getting out on those and contesting open shots as well. Just a very sound defender, very high IQ defender as well. Moving on to some of the concerns I have regarding Malaki Branham. As you can see, there's not a lot, but first off, I want to talk about his playmaking, which I do think is a big area of growth for Malaki. I'm not saying I'm a bit conflicted with his playmaking. He's definitely shown flashes as a pick and roll ball handler, and I feel like this is the next step for Malaki Branham to take in order to really cement himself as a legit star. And I feel like if he can grow as a playmaker to just being an adequate playmaker out of pick and roll situations, I think he's going to be a legit star at the NBA level. But he's shown flashes of being able to make reads. Specifically, I remember against, I believe it was either Michigan State or maybe even last game against Penn State. I'm not sure. Whenever I watch these prospects, I always just watch a lot of games just consecutively, so my mind's a bit scrambled right now. But I remember the specific play where it was a DHO turned into a pick and roll, and he hit Joey Brunk, Ohio State's big man, beautifully off this read. I really like that. I think if he shows more, it was against Penn State. My apologies. But I think that if he could do that more often, just utilize his playmaking, because I feel like he has the vision, or he's shown flashes of having the vision, but there's just a lot of possessions where either it's EJ Liddell or Joey Brunk again, or any number of Ohio State's big men where they're just kind of slip off that ball screen, and he just won't even look their way. And they'll be open, and it's just a number of times it's like, okay, like I know he can thread that needle, but it's like, I don't know. It's like, is it the vision, right? And can you improve on that is another big question, right? I feel like you can tell guys to do it, but if a guy's just wired one way, he's just wired one way, right? Not everybody can be a Gene Montero or a Kennedy Chandler, right? So I mean, it's something that he definitely has to improve on. I feel like if he improves on it, he's going to be a star in the NBA, no doubt. But how much he can improve on it, I'm not sure. I think he can, just because he's shown glimpses, but still, it's an area of growth for Mr. Malaki Branham. Moving on to another part of his game that I think could use some work is just his handle. As I mentioned before, he usually sticks to a lot of crossovers, But I feel like if his handle could take another step, utilize more between the legs, I think he could also benefit off utilizing a lot of behind the backs too. So you see a player like Jason Tatum, whenever a defender kind of cuts off his lanes, he loves to just change direction, a quick behind the back, and change his course of action that way. And I feel like that would really benefit a player like Malaki Branham, because a lot of times if he's coming off a screen and the defender cuts off his driving lane, or they'll just cut off wherever he's going, like they'll just step out in front of the screen, he tends to freeze up a little bit. You kind of see it, not necessarily on you can't always get that face angle, of course, but you could just see it in his body language. He kind of like shakes it. He's kind of like, oh, like, now what do I do, right? And I feel like just developing a deeper bag would definitely help with this issue, right? With him just being able to, when that defender cuts off his lane, just boom between the legs real quick, and if he slips in again, boom between the legs again, right? But I feel like just given how good of a handle, solid of a handle he has right now, I feel like his handle developing should be something that we should expect over time. And again, he's only 18 years old, so there's only room to grow for the young guard. And that's about it on the offensive side of the floor, except for this one other issue, and it's just with his pull-ups, especially in like the mid-range area, he tends to drop his form, which leads to his shots typically hitting the back of the rim. He kind of just flicks his shot up, like he'll kind of shoot and then he'll just put it down, like like we've all seen a player that does that, whether or not we've done it or at a runs or official games, whatever. We've all seen a player that has a shot like that, and he makes a lot of these shots, but I think just being more consistent with his follow through would really help with this issue. I feel like it would definitely help with making his mid-range shots more consistent, just because he kind of just shoots it and then he kind of just lets it go, and then you can kind of see the arc, like when the ball is still going up, you can kind of see the arc of the shot be a little messed up. So I think just holding his follow through when he shoots would really help him in terms of just fine-tuning some of his efficiency as a mid-range scorer, but he's already such a good mid-range scorer, so that would only take his game, his mid-range scoring game, to the next level, I think. And even his pull-up threes as well, I think that would really help him in that area as well. And outside of that, that's really all I have offensively. Defensively, I think he can bite a bit on pump fakes, whether that be on the perimeter or down low. I think he's picked up a number of fouls this year simply because of that, because he tends to bite up pump fakes. So just being more disciplined, really just utilizing his strength and length, which he already does very well. He's a very disciplined defender, so I think just fine-tuning, just sticking more to his discipline. If not everybody's going to be a steals blocks guy, that doesn't really seem to be him. So if he could just stick to just sticking to what he knows, I feel like that would be really beneficial for Malaki Branham. But again, outside of that, this is not a lot of concerns. I guess you guys can tell how high I am on Malaki Branham. I guess we'll get right into where I have him going. I didn't have him going in my mock draft simply because I needed to see more of him. I felt that I wanted to see a more consistent streak of games from him. I wanted to see him put together a much larger product, and he has not disappointed. He has definitely not disappointed. I had him as an early second round prospect last time I did my mock draft, about 2 weeks ago, but now I have him as a lottery pick. I'm not gonna lie. Malaki Branham is the real deal. I know I stated that Ochai Agbaji is the real only 3-and-D Malaki Branham is a 3-and-D prospect, a great prospect. Just such a polished three-way scorer, shifty, strong. The change of pace is real. That burst is real. Just his hoppingness, the way he just is so patient, such a high IQ player. Even though the playmaking needs work, just how good of a scorer he is just so impressive. The handles, how disciplined of an on-ball defender and an off-ball defender as well. I have Malaki Branham as a lottery pick. And I only expect him to continue to rise on my board. And depending on how Ohio State does in the big tournament, could really help Malaki Branham's case as a for-sure lottery pick in the eyes of other people. And that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think about Malaki Branham in the comments. Do you guys agree with me and think that he is a lottery talent? Do you guys think he's a middle of the first round, end of the first round? What do you guys foresee his role being in the NBA? What do you guys think his ceiling is going to be in the NBA? Let me know what you guys think about him in the comments down below. And aside from that, that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and share it with a friend if you have. I want to keep growing the channel, keep growing the community that we have here. And yeah, aside from that, that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and peace.